In the news tonight, Saudi Arabia offers a 5-day humanitarian truce in Yemen amid international concern about the dire humanitarian situation there. Palestinians express pessimism over formation of Israel's right-wing government as new construction is announced in occupied East Jerusalem. And Britain's vote in the tightest election for decades that could cause government gridlock. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Saudi Arabia and the United States said a renewable 5-day ceasefire in Yemen's war would start soon to facilitate aid to millions of civilians in need. At a joint news conference with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Jubeir said the kingdom would halt airstrikes in Yemen because it is determined to expand relief assistance to the Yemeni people. Kerry said the so-called humanitarian pause wouldn't start for several days, enough time for diplomatic effort to convince the Houthi rebels and their backers to accept the terms of the deal. He said aid organizations also needed time to coordinate the best strategy for getting food, fuel and machine into and around the country. Jubeir insisted the feasibility of the plan depended on the Houthis and the Iranian agreeing to it and not trying to exploit the lull in fighting.
There will be a ceasefire everywhere or a ceasefire nowhere. And we expect that and hope that the Houthis will care enough about the Yemeni people to allow the humanitarian assistance to flow into Yemen and to cease their aggressive activities.
Today, we particularly welcome a new Saudi initiative to try to bring about a peaceful resolution through the announcement of their intent to establish a full 5-day renewable ceasefire and humanitarian pause. No bombing, no shooting, no movement or repositioning of troops to achieve military advantage.
The truce offer in Yemen comes days after the Houthi rebels started shelling Saudi border towns. The attacks prompted renewed airstrikes by the Saudi-led coalition as the Houthi militia advanced into a last central area of Aden. Saudi Arabia's military spokesman said last night that all options were open, including ground operations to stop the mortar attacks on Saudi border towns. Air raids to suppress further Houthi shelling last night struck the group's stronghold of Saada near Yemen's Saudi border and the small port of Maidi. The White House said President Barack Obama looks forward to consulting with Israel's new government on Iran's nuclear talks and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The two issues have caused strains in U.S.-Israeli relationship. The White House said Obama congratulated Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the formation of the new government. Netanyahu clinched the deal to form his cabinet barely 2 hours before a midnight deadline, but the coalition will rule by the slimmest of majorities in Israel's turbulent parliament. Here's more. Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza voiced pessimism over the formation of the right-wing Israeli government. In the West Bank city of Ramallah, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's spokesman Nabil Abu Raide said that the new Israeli government would be negative for the region. The spokesman said the rightist government believes in settlement activity, rejects the two-state solution, and still pushes through long-term political paralysis. He said the new government will be dangerous not only for the Palestinian issue, but for the general political atmosphere in the region. In the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip, a spokesman for the group voiced similar views, saying the new government reflects an increase of the racist spirit among Israelis. Hours after Prime Minister Netanyahu announced the deal on a governing coalition, Israel announced that the government had approved construction of 900 homes for Jewish settlers in occupied East Jerusalem. Hajit Ofran, a spokeswoman for the leftist Israeli Peace Now movement, said the new homes will be built in the East Jerusalem settlement neighborhood of Ramat Sholmo, following a decision yesterday by the city's district planning committee. The announcement came as U.S. Vice President Joe Biden was visiting Israel, provoking fierce American opposition and souring relations with Washington for a month. The Syrian army said its bombing in the mountainous area along the border with Lebanon killed dozens of militants and helped regain hilly territory overlooking strongholds of Hezbollah militia. Syrian forces backed by the Lebanese Hezbollah fighters captured territory known as Asal al-Ward on the Syrian side of the border after retaking strategic heights in the area. The Syrian army continued an offensive across rebel-held parts of the northwestern province of Idlib to regain significant amounts of ground lost in recent weeks. The Syrian Air Force intensified raids near a hospital in the outskirts of rebel-held Jisr al-Shuhur, where a number of Syrian troops have been holed up since Nusra Front and other factions captured the town last month. In Iraq, the U.S.-led military coalition launched 11 airstrikes against Daesh militants. The U.S. Combined Joint Task Force said in a statement the strikes targeted the militants deployed the vehicle fuel tanks building and other structures near the city of Biji, Ramadi, Mosul, and others. The task force added that the coalition conducted no strikes in Syria during the 24-hour period through yesterday morning. Here at home, His Majesty the King, the Supreme Commander of the Jordan Armed Forces Arab Army, met the Army Chief to discuss a number of military affairs. The King was welcomed by the King's Advisor for Military Affairs, Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, General Mish'al al-Zibin, and senior Army officers. King Abdullah voiced his satisfaction with the high morale and outstanding level of armed forces had reached in various fields. The King's Advisor for Military Affairs and Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, General Mish'al al-Zibin, met the U.S. Air Force Secretary Deborah Lee James to discuss cooperation between the two countries. During the meeting, attended by His Royal Highness Prince Faisal bin al-Hussein, they discussed cooperation in various fields and ways of cementing military ties. The U.S. delegation praised the outstanding level reached by Jordan's armed forces and the level of coordination and cooperation between the two countries. A detailed review issued by the International Monetary Fund on Jordan's economy said the conflicts in Syria and Iraq are resulting in disruptions to trade routes, less tourism, and a hesitant investment sentiment. It pointed out that program performed by the kingdoms remains broadly on course, where public sector adjustment needs to continue with the wide fall from lower oil prices. The report said structural performance saw improvement, including the pre-approval of a credit bureau and the establishment of a new public investment framework. The study also said there is an urgent need for broad-based policy action in the labor market to put the unemployment into jobs, increase female labor force participation in reform public sector compensation and hiring practices. Britons voted in the tightest election for decades that could cause government gridlock. Final opinion polls showed Prime Minister David Cameron's Conservatives and Ed Miliband's opposition Labour Party almost in a dead heat, indicating neither will win enough seats for the outright majority in the 650-seat parliament. However, the survey suggested there had been some late movement toward Labour. Here's more.
In London, as across the UK, up to 48 million voters are casting ballots in the tightest election seen in decades. Analysts predict it could bring government gridlock. It could push the world's fifth largest economy closer to leaving the European Union. And it could stoke a second attempt by Scotland to break away. But some voters aren't worried.
I think there's been a lot of scaremongering, but I don't actually think there's much to worry about. EU referendum is something that I would be worried about, but I don't mind it taking place.
Final opinion polls show the two major parties, Conservative and Labour, are at a near-dead heat. If neither party wins an overall majority, talks would begin Friday with smaller parties in a race to strike deals. That could lead to a formal coalition or produce a fragile minority government.
I think it would be easy if there was one majority party in power, but hopefully a coalition will still work.
If a durable government can't be formed, Britain could face political instability and a not-so-united kingdom.
Iran released a Marshall Island flat container ship and its crew, which was seized last month in one of the world's major oil shipping lanes. The vessel was diverted on April 28 by Iranian patrol boats in the Strait of Hormuz, prompting the United States to send vessels to monitor the situation and to accompany U.S.-flagged vessels passing through the waterway. An Iranian foreign ministry official confirmed the Maersk container ship was released and it has left Iranian territory waters. The Maersk incident coincided with heightened tensions over the civil war in Yemen. Iran's state news agency said this Iranian port and shipping organization would issue a statement in a few hours on the details of the release of Maersk Tigris. Danish shipping giant Maersk has insisted on the release of the vessel and its 24 crew members. We start with tennis. Roger Federer became the latest member of the Big Four to be defeated by Nick Kyrgios as the Australian beginner sent the Swiss top seed spinning out of the Madrid Master in the second round. Now ranked 35th, Kyrgios ended Federer's hope of winning a fourth Madrid trophy with a heart-pumping 6-7, 7-6, 7-6 victory. As Kyrgios celebrated, Federer suffered his earliest exit in 11 visits to Madrid. Facing an opponent who was just 8 when he won the first of his record 17 Grand Slam title in 2003, Federer wasted 2 match points in the tension-filled third set tie-break. Ferrari driver Sebastian Vettel drove his way into the presentation of Ferrari Land, a new ride in the Port Aventura theme park in northeastern Spain. Quadruple world champion Vettel, who failed to win a race at the Red Bull last season after ending 2013 on a dominant high with 9 wins in a row, is now in a run for silverware and leading his team's silver versus red battle against Mercedes. Reigning champions Mercedes were surprised in Malaysia by Ferrari's newcomer, and the 27-year-old has no intention of lowering the pressure.
Very nice. I've been welcomed in a very nice way, and has been very exciting. So for me, in many ways.
And the weather outlook, it will be a bit chilly across the hilly areas, but mild in the rest of the country with some medium and high clouds and northwesterly moderate winds. Tomorrow it will be fair across many regions, but relatively hot in the Jordan Valley and the Gulf of Aqaba, though with some clouds and a chance for light local showers in eastern and southern areas. Winds will be brisk and dusty, particularly in the Badia, while the port of Aqaba should expect a fair night and relatively hot day tomorrow with somewhat choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end the news, here's a recap of our top stories. Saudi Arabia offers a 5-day humanitarian truce in Yemen amid international concern about the dire humanitarian situation there. Palestinians express pessimism over formation of Israel's right-wing government as new construction is announced in occupied East Jerusalem. And Britain's vote in the tightest election for decades that could cause government gridlock. And with this we come to an end. I'm Farah Ajlouni. Thank you for watching and have a good night.